As we approach the end of the calendar year, I've been reflecting a lot on the changes that 2020 has brought us, and I know for me personally, I was looking at 2020 of being able to travel around the country and even travel globally and teach classes for all of our wonderful clients. And then the coronavirus pandemic happened. And for us, we went 100% virtual. And I know for other organizations, they had work from home immediately thrust upon them because of the coronavirus. Well, it makes me think of a quote from Dale Carnegie. Happiness doesn't depend on any external conditions. It is governed by mental attitude. So as we've had to, or as we've transitioned into the world of Zoom meetings and Microsoft Teams meetings and all of our business, or much of our business, being done virtual, we have had to adapt to delivering virtual presentations. And this is something that we are constantly striving to get better at. Well, that is what we are here to discuss and share with you, is just some tips and tricks to help you improve your virtual presentation skills so that you can be more effective as we continue to grow in this virtual environment. Now, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is David Ogden, and I'm going to be one of your co-facilitators for this workshop. And I'm excited to introduce my peer to you, Mr. Bill Krieger, who's also going to be sharing some wonderful information with you. So, Bill, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, well, set the bar high for me there, David. I have to come up now with wonderful information groups. So thanks, David. Hey, David, you and I have been doing this for a while, and it's pretty fun to be together because typically we're not. So I'm glad to be on board with you and to share what we know about virtual presenting and training. So glad to be on board.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Bill. And we're going to see more Bill in just a little bit. If you would like to stay in contact with Bill and I, we both have a LinkedIn account, so we still stay relatively active on LinkedIn. So you can see there on the slide, if you would like to have a longer term connection with us, you can feel free to reach out and either follow us or connect with us. We would love to have you all as a connection. Now, I just want to say welcome to everyone. I'm so glad that all of you are joining us. And as I was looking at the list of everybody that had signed up for this webinar, I saw some of our friends, some of our partners that we have been able to provide training for over the years. So for those of you that might have been in our classes or done a little bit of business with us, we want to say a special welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us for this webinar.
It's interesting, Dave, as I see your slide. Look at all those companies that we've had an opportunity to be a part of, to learn from, and to share with. That's pretty humbling for sure. And I know that's not even really the tip of the iceberg, but it is a real eye-opener of how iSpeak, the company we're with, has been able to help so many become better communicators and increase productivity, strengthen relationships. Really nice.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, as we go through the webinar, we do have the chat panel available, and during the webinar, you can feel free to ask questions, answer questions in the chat panel, and just give us some feedback during the webinar. We look forward to hearing that feedback from all of you. So I want to encourage you to use that feedback. The more interaction that we get, the better. And speaking of having a little bit of interaction, I do want you to go to that chat panel, and I want you to share with us, where are you joining us from? I'm always curious, what type of a global reach do we have in these webinars? So share with us in the chat panel, what is your current location? Where are you joining us from? Now, I'll share with you, I'm joining you from Katy, Texas, just on the west side of the Houston area.
Yeah, and I'm in Bulverde, Texas, which is just a little north of San Antonio. Now, David, I know that you had some conversations before we start today with Erica, and she kind of had a new location for you on your map, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So she was joining us all the way from Fortaleza, Brazil. So on the northern coast of Brazil, and that was actually a new location. I'd never had anybody from that location in any of my webinars or classes. So I have a little cork board back here. I was able to put a new pin in the cork board.
Well, good. Well, look, we've got some Colorado people here. Andrea and Sal. Let's see, Andrea and Julie. Are you freezing there, ladies? I mean, are we getting some snow yet into that part of the world? I love Colorado, by the way. Yeah. And then look, we got Sal in Tampa. Yeah, Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin, you've got to be cold, right?
So I also see that we have Marie joining us from the Netherlands, and Eve joining us from Baltimore. I know you guys have been getting some heavy snows and some nasty weather up in the Northeast. So I hope everything is good for you, as well as Elise joining us from Philadelphia.
Yeah, and Sal, I don't believe you 1 minute that you're chilly in Tampa. Come on, give me a that's got to be like, well, that's chilly here. I mean, we were below freezing this morning here in San Antonio, but we don't get much snow, but it does get cold. Well, it's great to have you all with us from around the world, and it's always good that, you know, this is one of the things that virtual can do for us, right, David? It can bring the world together into a single meeting, and I didn't have to sit 15 hours in a small airplane seat, right, wearing a face mask, worried about the people around me.
So Bill, share with us what are we going to share with them over this next hour?
Yeah, here's where we need to go. So we're going to take a look at bad virtual presentations. Hey, David and I have seen a bunch of these, and we're going to elicit some of your help and input on this, because you're probably in more virtual presentations than we are, and we're doing it now as a full-time job. And we've seen some mistakes, haven't we? So we're gonna take a look at what makes the virtual presentation bad, with the idea that we want to eliminate those characteristics. We're also going to take a look at turning on your video camera, your webcam. Now, I'm seeing a trend moving more in that direction, but I'm still getting a lot of people who refuse to turn it on. So let's talk about why that's a good idea, and then how to do that and show you all the leadership and the credibility that you need, and some of the do's and don'ts with the video. And of course, since we're not face-to-face, your voice plays even a bigger part of your presentation, communicating in a virtual setting. So let's take a look at some things that we can do to make your voice more engaging and keeping the audience's attention. We'll also need to have a clear, concise, and complete message. If we ever needed organizational structure, which we do, we need it even more in a virtual setting, just because the audience has so much distraction around them. How easy is it for us to disengage? Hey, I know some of you right now are multitasking while I'm going over the key bullet points of our webinar. So we've got to have a clear message, and you've got to know it. And then how about those slides, where slides play a major role in a virtual setting, and we've seen slides that are a mess. So David, I think we better talk about that too. How can we bring some simplicity to some of these slides, and really what is the role of the slides? And then we need to talk also about virtual platforms and what we can do within those platforms to keep the audience engaged. So that's where we're headed, group. Quite a few things, lots of information. We're going to have certainly a lot of fun with it. So let's go to that first one. Now, bad virtual presentations. Hey, I've seen some where, and typically what comes to my mind is that it's just connectivity issues, right? People can't get logged in or they get booted out, and that's a frustration. All right, so join me in the chat window and share with David and I and each other some of those things that you have witnessed that make a virtual presentation just a rough place to be. Yeah, Vanessa, good stuff there. Yeah, it's all lecture, isn't it? Yeah, that could be a huge problem. Yeah, it's all lecture. And you know what? The monologue is good on the late show, but not in the virtual training, right, David?
That is correct. I see Julie said lack of organization.
Yeah, where we don't even know where we're going or why, right? And boy, if your audience is saying, where are we and how did we get on this? You've lost them. Yeah. Yeah. Now, Mara, you're saying too busy. I'm not sure what that means. So give us a little, I mean, too busy as far as the slides or the speaker is too busy. Yeah, what? Yeah, yeah. Simon, you've got death by PowerPoint. I have died multiple times looking at PowerPoint.
Yeah, so slide overload in a 10-minute presentation is another comment that I see in the chat panel.
Oh, yeah, and reading slides. No, thank you. Yeah, so a lot of slide problems I'm seeing here, David. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of slide problems. So I'm glad, Bill, that we're going to be talking about that. So a lot of issues in the virtual presentations, but it's not just the slides, but slides are a part of it, and we need to have awareness of what we have seen that's bad, because we can learn from the mistakes of others so that we have more effective presentations for ourselves. And one of the things that we can do to have more effective presentations going forward is to have awareness of how we utilize our video. So when we think about video, I know I've seen some meetings where everybody has their videos off, and it seems like it's just a conference call on a computer. And then I've seen other meetings where everybody has their video on. And when that happens, when I look at those two types of meetings, there's one that's much more engaging. And that's the one where we have the video on, because we can see each other, we can interact with each other. So we want to try and incorporate the video in, and it will make us feel like we're connecting with the other people a little bit more. But when we do that, there are some things that we need to have awareness of when we are presenting with video on, or when we're having a meeting with video on. So we're going to break this down just a little bit for you. And hey, Bill, you're muted.
The phrase of 2020, you're on mute, right? Read my lips, David, read my lips. Yeah, here you're talking about, and it sounds like, David, you really like people to turn on their webcam so you can see your audience, depending on the size of the group. I mean, we have 32 people online. I'm not sure we need 32 webcams on, right? That could be a challenge. But certainly with some smaller groups, I can see it. Oh, go ahead, David, please.
Well, and the other thing we have to have awareness of is, if you have your video on all the time, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So we don't expect the videos to be on all the time, but there are certain times that we want to have that interaction that we should have the videos on.
Right. And we need to use it when we're speaking, right? That's because they need to see us, see our facial expressions. Now, I have a word for those of you that turn on your webcams and leave it on and you're an audience member. Just be careful what you're doing in your webcam because you're sending a message. I mean, if David's talking and you're doing this, you're sending a message that you don't care, you're not engaged, or you get up and you walk out, you walk back in. I mean, if you're going to do that stuff, I would say turn that thing off.
Yeah, and I love the comment that Charlie put in the chat panel as well of the organization is asking participants to turn off the video to spare bandwidth, and there are considerations like that that we need to take into account. But going back to what Bill said, especially when you are the one speaking, you need to have that webcam on. We want, as an audience, we want to see you, and there's things that we perceive from what we're seeing in how we interpret your message. Now, specifically to virtual presentations, there's some things that we need to have awareness of that we've had to adapt to and learn this year as we've gotten used to virtual presentations. And the first thing is we need to be aware of our camera position. So we want to make sure that our camera is approximately eye level. When I'm trying to position my camera, I try and do the three fingers above the head to the top of my frame, so I get a good fill of my body in the frame. And I know that some of you either have these computers or have used these computers before where the webcam is down right above the keyboard, and it's between the monitor and the keyboard. And when you have that camera, it's almost the looking up the nose, or I know some people call it the nose cam. Well, that's not the most flattering angle to look at a human being. So we might want to consider in those cases getting an external camera to help us with the camera positioning. We also need to be aware of lighting and making sure that you have effective lighting in wherever you're going to be presenting. So I will tell you, for my personal setup, I have put my desk in my home office in front of two windows here, so I get really good natural light during the day. But then at night, if I'm ever presenting at night, I have a ring light on my desk as well, so I can get good lighting on my face. And then I also have my regular room light that lights up my background and the rest of my room. So we have to be aware of that. But if I didn't have this lighting on the front and I just had the lighting from the back, I would be backlit and you would only see shadows on my face. So we want to be aware of the lighting in a room.
Well, what do you think about attire in a virtual setting, David? I mean, is there some rules of engagement of really what we should be wearing when we're trying to, really we're working from home? So does anything go?
We are still at work. So we need to maintain a proper business attire that is appropriate for our business environment. So you need to follow the guidance for whatever your organization says that's appropriate in those settings. So we need to have awareness of that. So Bill, I would say for us, not appropriate, sir.
Oh, I just got this too.
See, I agree with Charlie in the chat panel. An Astros hat would look much nicer, but I'm a Houston guy.
Oh, those cheaters. What are you talking about?
Bill, another thing that we need to have awareness of is we need to be aware of the movement that we have in the virtual environment. So when our audience is looking at us in this virtual environment, they're only seeing this much of the world or this much of our world. So if we have excessive movement, it can become a distraction. We need to be aware of the movement that we have, but we can also have very purposeful movement. We can do things to help us and help with the engagement that we have with our audiences. So a couple things that come to mind in helping to us to have that engagement in the virtual environment is when we use gestures. The normal area that we use gestures is right about the bottom of our rib cage. Well, when we are in the virtual environment, our hands almost have to come up a little bit higher than what they normally would so that they're visible to our audience. Because if we're just doing gestures right here at the bottom of the screen, it's a bit of a distraction. So get your hands up just slightly higher than what you naturally would. And then another trick that I do is I position myself a little bit further away from my camera. So when I bring my hands up, I don't have the appearance of the giant hands in the screen. Bill, do you have any things that that you like to think about in the movement in our virtual environments?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I really like what you're teaching us here about using hand gestures. A lot of times we wonder if it's okay to use hand gestures in a virtual setting, and the answer is yes. We just have to use it a little different than when we're face to face and they can see us very, very well. So I like the idea of raising your hands, and I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see that when I raise my hands, look at how close they are to my body. And that'll keep you from, doing what you were saying, really big hands. I keep them really close. And then when I do bring my hands up, I don't want to wave them around. It just looks like stuff's flying through the screen. So you just have to be more methodical. Think about what gesture you're going to make and hold it before you go to the next one. And it'll seem much more natural and real. Of course, the other key is I'm sitting on a swivel chair, David. So this is right. This is an issue where I'm just doing this because everything I do is sending a message, and my swiveling in the chair or my rocking, or sometimes I do this because I'm nervous or uncomfortable, sends a message that maybe you're not believing everything you're saying or you're hiding something. And that's not a message you want to send to your audience.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. And speaking of sending a message to our audiences, we also want to have awareness of our background. And I know that you and I, we both teach a lot of classes. So we've taken the time to put together our home offices where we have a nice background for our virtual presentations. But I realized that that's not exactly appropriate for everybody, because some people, their home situation, you might be working from your kitchen table and the kids might be running around in the background, or somebody poking their head in the door, or something like that. So and I see a question in the chat panel from Terry of what's better, a real background or an artificial background. Well, my answer to that is it depends on your specific situation in that case. And if you want to use a virtual background, I think that's okay, with the thought process that it's appropriate for the business environment. We're delivering virtual business presentations. So if you're using a virtual background to get rid of some of the clutter or the distractions in the background, that's okay. But just make sure that you're using an appropriate background that's not going to be a distraction.
Yeah, very good, David. I like that. And, sometimes we think we have to have a solid wall or something behind us, or a solid color. Now, there is something, Terry, about virtual backgrounds you want to be aware of, because if I'm going to show you a product, and I have a background now that's live. This is my office. But if I go to a virtual background where I'm doing maybe this background, and I hold up my phone, do you see the problem? Not until the phone gets into with me, it just all of a sudden disappears. Which, Terry, if you're holding up a drink that you don't want anybody to see, then this is actually a pretty nice background. Otherwise, it's not going to work if you're going to try to display product or show them something unless you get it right in front of you. So again, just some ideas about the virtual and which one is better.
And Bill, I know that when you're delivering virtual presentations, you like to be seated when you're delivering those. So can you share with us some ideas around being seated but still having a professional presence when you're speaking?
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm showing that, right? So yes, I am seated, mostly, as you know, David, because I'm over 2 meters tall. I'm just under 7 feet tall. So if I stand at my computer, all you're going to get is my kneecaps. So I am sitting down. Now, when you're just listening and you're not delivering in your virtual, then you can do what you need to do to be relaxed and stay connected with the speaker. When you're speaking, though, things need to change. The struggle of sitting down is that too often your voice sits down with you, and then it loses the dynamics, the inflection, all the emotion that comes with it, because everything just kind of goes down a few notches. So, how to overcome that? Here's what I recommend. First of all, sit up straight. Notice that it's saying a balanced head. Now, what that means is not that your head's going to fall off your shoulders, but that your earlobes, your shoulder, and your hips are in an alignment with each other. That means that your back is straight, your shoulders are back. And to do this, I move my back off the back of my chair and sit on the front edge. This is when I'm presenting, sitting on the front edge of my seat. It forces me to sit up straight, which allows my diaphragm to do a lot of the work in keeping my voice as engaging as possible. Feet flat on the floor. Remember, you've got to take care of yourselves. We're finding ourselves more than ever sitting at a desk looking at your computer. Even when you did it before, it seems like we've just amplified it with the work from home situation we're in. So take care of yourself and get your feet down. And then when you can, on a break or something, make sure you're getting up and stretching before you sit back down again. Now, David, we have some options. We don't have to be seated all the time, do we?
No, we do not need to be seated. And actually, just recently, I purchased a sit stand desk converter to just go right on top of my desk. So I have the option of being seated or standing. And I love the option of being able to stand when I present. And to your point of talking about, we're sitting so much now this year with work from home. I actually prefer to stand, and I feel like it has several benefits. Number one, I'm up and I'm standing. I feel like it gives me more energy, and I just prefer it. It's a much better option for me. So I would encourage everybody, if you haven't tried it, to go ahead and try and stand when you present, even virtually, because it will help with your presence when you are presenting. And I see we have one participant that actually says that they stand as well. So I love that. It is such a great option to have. Now, when we were just talking about video, but we also need to consider our voice. So Bill, do you have any thoughts around how do we use our voice in virtual presentations?
Yes, and this is where, group, we need to pick up our game here a little bit. Most of us know, like with talk radio and someone who's professionally trained, and they're on the radio and you can't see them, their voice has to engage us, or we're switching over to Christmas music or country station or rock, whatever your genre is. We're not going to stay listening. And we oftentimes don't realize how good they are until they bring on a guest subject matter expert who's not trained, and it's almost like they're asleep. So we want the voice to really engage the audience. That means we've got to push our energy a little more than we would normally do. Yeah, low energy that is going to be a killer because it means your voice is monotone. And you start to sound like the GPS voice in my car or on my phone. And if I'm going to listen to that for any length of time, I'm going to think you're not all that excited about this, which means I'm not all that excited about it. Whatever you bring to the stage is contagious. So bring the voice that shows the passion, shows the urgency, the concern, and drives the emotion along with the rhetoric, the data that gets the message better understood and implemented. Now, what's key in all of this is that when we are at a microphone and we're speaking into a microphone into our laptops and it's being recreated in speakers at other locations, in all of that transfer, your voice will lose a little bit of the energy in all that recreation. That means that if I talk like I normally would do if we were face to face, it's going to sound less than that on the other end. That means you've got to push your boundaries a little bit of what you're comfortable with. A little more volume, higher pitches, lower tones, maybe slightly longer breaks and pauses that make it more dynamic and feel like it's more conversational, even though I'm 1,000 miles away in Brazil and listening.
So, Bill, can we have a problem to the opposite extreme where we have too much energy, and what are some of the challenges or the pitfalls that can come from that?
Yeah, well, the struggles with too much energy, as we know, because David, you and I, we're very passionate about what we do, right? And sometimes that passion can overflow. And then what happens is that we end up talking way too fast. We get excited. When people talk too fast, it makes it, I mean, we just rip. And if I were to write it, it would look like your slide right here. If you try to read this, I mean, you have to really put some energy just to read this and find out where the words stop and the next one starts. And it's all written down. When I speak this quick, I don't even give you a chance to do that kind of, decoding. And there is no time. The other struggle then is with clarity. The last part of a word gets smeared and run into the next word. So we're losing the first and the last letters of each word. And now it just molds together. And for me, it sounds like Charlie Brown's school teacher. Do you remember the Charlie Brown cartoons, the school teachers or the adults? Charlie Brown would say something and they would go wah 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 wah. Yeah. Yeah. And pretty soon that's all this sounds like, right? That's all this sounds like. We must have clarity because if people cannot understand you, then they will not pay attention, which means that comprehension is lost, and you can guarantee they won't retain anything but how bad it was. And nobody wants to be remembered by that, right? So there are some things that we can do that can help with speed and clarity. You got it. Take a look at this, this next little trick here. We can do this. Yeah, and it's called tongue twisters. And I know there's some great ones out there. We've all heard them, right? Sally sells seashells down by the seashore. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? I mean, there's a bunch, right? Peter Piper, all of them. Well, here's one that I'm going to give you a challenge with. And I don't believe there's anything that's actually is an Irish wristwatch. It's just the two words together that can make it difficult to pronounce. So here's your challenge. I want you to do this right where you're at. You don't need to turn on any microphones. You're muted. Just right where you're at. Try saying Irish wristwatch as fast as you can go 5 times and do it without a mistake. And let's see how you do. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Hey, go to your chat window real quick. I know, Mike, that we don't want to spend too much time in the chat, right? Typing is a royal pain after a while. But jump into your chat window and tell me, how did you do doing it 5 times? Did you get it, or was it a total wreck? David, have you done some of these little exercises, like your favorite tongue twister, right?
Absolutely, I have. I think my favorite comes from the movie with Will Ferrell, Anchorman, where he's talking unique New York, unique.
Yes, yeah. Hey, some of our participants are having trouble here. Look at this. KM said messed up on the first one. Mike, a total wreck. Mike, I get it. Yeah, yeah. And of course, Charlie has the secret on this one, where he says it works if you drink Irish whiskey and then try it, and then it comes out really good, right? And Terry, you're right. In order to do these, you have to slow down. And group, our English language here in the States is typically not spoken all that fast. We speak somewhere around 125 words a minute. Now, other parts of the world are going to speak much quicker. I think in like the Asian Pacific part of the world, they're going to bump up to 150, 170. If you go to Puerto Rico and listen to the Spanish there, I think they're somewhere around 5,000 words a minute. I'm kidding, but boy, do they talk fast. And my Puerto Rican friends, I always tease them a little bit about it. Slow down. But for us here in the States, slowing down is key. In fact, when we want to really emphasize something, so you never misunderstand, what do? Which is what I just showed you. We slow down even more. And I'm thinking, when my dad was mad at me and he wanted to reiterate what I was supposed to be doing, he never rushed with that reiteration. I said, take out the garbage. Like, there's no way I could misunderstand that. And I had no argument as to why I didn't do it at that point. Now, the other thing that we can do here to help the voice is to smile, right, David? And that smile is going to be key. You quoted Dale Carnegie earlier here in your opening. Dale Carnegie, in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he's going to tell you that one of the top things you can do is to smile. Smile takes a somewhat hostile situation and can change the tone to where it is more inviting and safe. I'm approachable, I'm likable. A smile also says it's good news. Now, just make sure that your facial expressions are matching the message and the tone that you want to give out. But a smile can be huge in helping you connect with your audience. And you can hear a smile. David, can you tell when you call your wife on the phone if she's smiling or not? I know you two been married for quite a while. So when you call her on the phone, David, can you tell if she's smiling or if she's upset?
Yes, I can. And I'm sure you can too. You've been married for longer than I have.
Yeah, after 40 years, how she answers the phone, I know if it's a good day or a bad day, whether I'm going to say I'm sorry or let's go out to dinner, right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Well, let's talk a little bit about then the message, David. Does you have some thoughts on that?
You're absolutely right. I do. And I know earlier when we were talking about poor presentations, and all of you were giving us your thoughts on poor presentations. One of the comments was that there was lack of organization, and Julie talked about that. I'm sure that we've all seen presenters that just go on and on and on in their presentations, and it doesn't feel like they have any organization. It could feel like they are talking in circles. So we need to have organization in our slides. And we don't always have to be the ones that are delivering the information. So one of the things that we have available to us in the virtual realm is we can turn part of our presentation over to somebody else. We can show a video of somebody else delivering information, and that helps back up the point that we are trying to make. Now, I know in Zoom, when you need to share a video or play a video, you need to make sure that you enable the audio on it. Otherwise, you're just going to see the video and you're not going to hear any audio. So you need to make sure that you do that, but that's one of the nuances of Zoom. But to help us with thinking of organization, I'm going to combine using a video and thinking of the organization of our presentation. And I want to share with you the rule of three video. And I want you to watch this video, and then what we're going to do, we're going to talk about how the rule of three is so powerful when it comes to presentation. So let's take a look here.
Schools across the entire country are telling kids today, in case of an emergency, dial 911. If there's a fire, stop, drop, and roll. And they're even sharing stories about 3 little pigs and 3 blind mice. Notice a commonality? All are memorable, and all are built around the number 3. Consider the Latin phrase omne trium perfectum. It means everything that comes in threes is perfect, or every set of 3 is complete. This trend, well, it actually still exists in our adulthood. Consider this. The TSA tells you to do 3 things: show your ID, take out your liquids, and remove your shoes. In 2011, Steve Jobs described the new iPad as thinner, lighter, and faster. Again, the number 3. The rule of 3 is really all around us because it works. Because here's the ultimate thing. The human brain works like this. 1, 2, 3, I forget. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is ever going to remember your 4th or your 5th or even your 10th point. So the next time you work on your presentation, aim for this. You guessed it, the number 3.
The rule of 3 is very powerful. So we can use videos to help prove a point and help back up part of our presentation. It gives us a little bit of a break as a presenter. It can be very powerful to hear another voice. Now, going to the content of this video, when we are organizing and putting structure to our presentations, we want to try and use the rule of 3. The rule of 3, it goes back to just the way our human brains are wired. And this is not a new concept. Aristotle wrote about this in his book of rhetoric, where he described we need to have 3 forms of proof in an argument. So how do we use this in a presentation? Is we start off with our opening. We have 3 key points in our presentation, and then we have a closing. That's the way that we can structure this. And there are always exceptions to a rule. I know that we call this the rule of 3, there's always exceptions to a rule. So as an example, if you ever have a situation where you're doing an end of year recap and you're having to do a quarter by quarter presentation, you wouldn't skip Q3 and just completely ignore Q4. That would be silly. So there are going to be exceptions to that. There might be times where you have 2, there might be times where you have 4 or 5, but there's power behind the rule of 3 because we as humans, we just naturally remember things in sets of 3s. So, and there's many different structures that we can use within this rule of 3 structure. So you could use a structure like what, so what, and now what. Just here's what we're discussing. Here's why it matters. And here are the next steps. So that's just a way that we can continue to refine that information so it's easier for our audience to understand. And there, like I said, there's many different types of structures that we can use. I know I personally like situation, action, results as a structure using the rule of 3 format. Bill, is there a structure that you personally like to use that follows the rule of 3 structure?
Yeah, I like one that's what, so what, now what. Just because when I'm putting my thoughts together, I just deal with those 3 questions, and I just answer out loud those questions, and it just kind of flows and makes sense. To me, it's a beautiful template that leads to a nice destination.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I appreciate you sharing that. So yeah, Bill, you like the what, so what, now what? I like situation, action, results. All of those use the rule of 3 format. So we start off with an opening, we have a rule of 3 format, and then we're going to wrap up our presentation. And this is something that's overlooked many times. Presenters don't think about how they're going to close out their presentation, and the closing ends up with the what I call the Porky the Pig closing, and a presenter almost panics, and they say, well, that's all I have. Thanks for coming. And
Yeah.
that's the way they wrap it up.
David, I've seen it. I've seen it actually happen where a gentleman ran out of time. You know, we always do. We run out of time before we run out of content. And so the person running the meeting was, giving the sign language, let's wrap this up. And I know that in his mind, he's like, I still have 10 minutes worth of information here. What am I going to cut out? What am I going to keep? And he panics. And finally, he just ends it with the Looney Tunes Porky Pig close because he was nervous. Now he's like, well, that's all, folks. And I went, oh my gosh, Porky has entered the building. No, we can do better, can't we, David? We can do better.
We absolutely can. And we need to think about how are we going to wrap up our presentation. So just a couple of thoughts on this. You can summarize what you have covered in that presentation. So you can give us a recap of that information. Another option or another thing that you can do to have an effective closing is you can think about the action items. So what are the next steps? What action do you want your audience to take? And thinking through those things and taking the time to prepare your closing will wrap up your presentation very effectively, because going to the laws of learning, the way that we as humans remember things, the recency effect, if we give the recap of everything that we've covered, and then we give an action item, that's the information that's going to stick in our audience's brain.
Right.
We need to think about that closing. Now, Bill, another thing that's very powerful in our virtual presentations, it's the slides.
Yeah.
It's how we incorporate slides. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we better, because we had several in the group at the opening that's saying this was a major issue, right, within virtual presentation. So we've got to have better slides, right? And you shared with me some of the struggles. Too much text. In fact, we end up getting slides that look like this. And then some of you even said, one of the things I hate is that they just read the slide to me. Now, this slide right here, because of all the text on it, just begs me to read it. And so, and if we were face to face and I had this slide, I'd have to turn my back, right? Because the slide would be projected behind me. So, hey, people tend to put everything they're going to say on their PowerPoint slide. And I'm not even making any eye contact with the group. Well, virtually what's going to happen is your first thing is that your audience is going to see this slide and cringe because no one wants all of this text, nor do they want to be read to. Come on, this isn't story time with Uncle Bill. We want you to make things simpler, and this is not simple. And if you're just going to read it, I'm going to chat to you or interrupt you and say, do I get a copy of the slides? If you say yes, you've just given me permission to stop listening, because I'll now go do something else. I'll focus on my phone or pull up another screen and do some Amazon shopping. I mean, I'm going to do something else because I can read this on my own later. Now, this problem exists because of the wrong preparation. Way up in the beginning of all this, we created a slide that was designed for me, the speaker. And the slides are not for the speaker. The slides are for the audience, to help the audience understand difficult concepts, not to be your speaker notes. Now, I know some of you are going, but Bill, my manager, my director, they're saying I have to have all this information in the slide deck so that after the presentation, they can go back and find it and refer to it later, like it's some kind of artifact. We get that. There are better places to put this information than in the slide, like backup slides, speaker notes, hidden slides, to name three. So there's lots that you can do and have a clean slide. Yeah, some of you are going to know who this next character is. So check this out. Yeah, does anybody know who this is? Yeah, jump in your chat window real quick and tell me, who is this person? Yeah, Julie, it's Waldo. Now it depends. Let's go to our Brazilian. Erica in Brazil, is this Waldo? Do you know him in Brazil as Waldo? Wally in the UK. Yeah, there you go, Jackie. Yes, he's Wally. I've even heard Javier. How do you like that? Yeah. Now the trick is to find him, right? Is to find him. All right. So show me that next slide, and you're going to see that basically he's hidden in this beach with all of this stuff going on. Okay. So go back to Wally. If Wally is the point we're trying to make, if this is the point that I need my audience to understand, then why am I showing a slide like this beach that he's hidden? Why am I showing you all the beach when really, in fact, sometimes people, this is like, show me the whole Excel spreadsheet. Show me the whole history of maybe a dashboard, or they just scan a working document and put it into a slide. Way too much information. And then they'll do stuff like this. Do we have let's see if we can find him. Go ahead. Yeah. So there he is. Does that even help? And then you're going to have people asking you about things that have nothing to do with Waldo here. And you know that if you have projected it or shared it, it's free game for conversation. So in this case, if Waldo is your point, then you could show me the beach and say, the XYZ document. Yes. Let's take a look at the key point from that document, which is Waldo. All right. Now, what we really want to do here then is, and the magic word is simplify. We need to bring simplicity. Our reason for coming together is to make the difficult simple. You see, complexity is our enemy. We want things to be simple. If you're not going to make it simple, then why are we having a meeting? If we're coming together and you make it more complex, what a backward step. So keep it simple. So here's some ideas on how to simplify. Let's take this slide, which has a lot of text, and I know there's some formatting here, but there really is 4 key points about the customer experience and then a lot of detail. That indented detail could be moved into speaker notes or a hidden slide or backup slide. And I could give you a bullet pointed slide with a nice picture. And as I talk about each one, I can bring these up. Now I know that's really simple, but certainly better than the previous. Now the struggle with this one for me is that we take this template, same title, same picture, and the next slide I might show you might have 4 different bullet points, but the slide looks the same. Now understand the dynamics of your virtual setting. Your audience is multitasking. They look at your slide and they should understand it in about 3 seconds. They look at it and go, okay, phone support, free delivery, web solutions, award-winning service, got it. And then they're back to doing whatever. And then they'll look to see if it's changed. And it might change, but it has the same title, the same picture, the same format, just different bullet points. And they don't even realize the slide changed topic. So try this. Take a look what else we can do to get out of the bullet point phrase. And notice here that we're using more picture, less text. Text is not memorable or engaging, but the graphics can be. So now I become the subject matter expert, not PowerPoint. Phone support, 24/7, free delivery, web solutions, and award-winning service is what our customers will experience. I can even do it with no text at all, right, David?
Yeah, I was about to ask you that and see if we could just get rid of all the words together and why would we want to do that?
Yeah, just because in this sense, I could actually, David, we could actually take one of these off now and your audience will remember and know which one's missing. That's the power of the image or the graphic. It's much more lasting and engaging. So if I took off the award-winning service and showed you the next slide without it, you would go, hey, you're missing your awards. But if I just had words there, you probably wouldn't pick it up or remember it. That part of our brain, it really helps with retention. Now we can also use smart art. Hey, we've got one here of smart art too. Yeah, now this is where we can take that first slide I showed you, where it's all text and there was some indents, remember that one? And we can highlight it, right click on it, and convert it to smart art. And that's what this is just smart art. And it lays it out really nice. You choose what pictures you want in there. And within seconds, you've got a much more engaging slide.
And I will say on all of these PowerPoint nuances that we're talking about, if you want to go and check out our YouTube channel, iSpeak.com YouTube channel, we did a series, we did 2 full webinars on visual storytelling. So we can definitely take a deeper dive into that in those webinars if you want to check those out. But Bill, we do have another example of smart art. So let's take a look at this one.
Yeah, this is what we call stacking, right, David? And I'll tell you, I know David could make this slide in about 30 seconds, right? And we think, really? Yeah, because all you do is create like award winning at the bottom, create your colored text box, get it all in there, you select it and hit Control D, position that one where you want it, and then Control D 2 more times and it automatically positions them. I mean, it's just, That's going to be your favorite keystroke group. Control D after you select a shape or a graphic, and it'll just duplicate it for you as many times as you hit it. Save you a ton of time. And there's a lot of color here, which means that while I'm multitasking, this slide comes up, it's going to pull my eyes back to the screen and to your presentation, and I'm going to read it and re-engage.
Now, as we start to come to the end of our presentation, we have one more thing to share with you. I know that we're going a little bit long for all of you, so I do want to say if you have to log off, the link to this webinar is going to be posted. We will get it uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you do need to log off, we understand that, but please go back and watch the replay of this on YouTube. But the last section that we're going to cover today is talking about using our virtual platforms to the best extent that we can. And the first thing that we need to think about when we are thinking about the virtual platforms, no matter what platform it is that you use, you need to have a solid network speed. So there's a couple of different websites that you can go to. I know the one that Bill and I use, we use speedtest.net. So you can take a look at that, and you can see what your internet speed is, what your upload speed is, what your download speed is, what your ping is. So you can check all of those things. I know I do that before I teach every class. I know Bill does that as well. So we can do that. Another thing that we need to think about is choosing our audio and video. And I know earlier I mentioned buying an upgraded webcam. You can also upgrade your speaker and microphone setup so you get the best audio connection as well. You don't want that to be broken. You don't want that to be fuzzy. And I know with some computers out there on the market, they don't have the best internal speaker and mics built into them. So that is a very easy upgrade. A lot of them are just plug and play USB, and they work fantastic. So you want to make sure that you're getting those things to have the best quality, but then in the program that you're using, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Adobe Connect, whatever the platform is, you are selecting the right audio and video for that program. Another thing that we can do is we can engage our audience with questions. And you've seen Bill and I do this throughout the class of asking questions and getting that interaction back and forth between you and your audience. And it's really easy in a true Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting, because you can just ask your teammates that are on that call with you to unmute themselves and talk to you. Now, Bill, we don't always have that option. So if we can't get our audience to be able to turn on their microphones, like even in this setting, what's another option that we have for engaging with our audience when we're asking questions?
Well, one of the things we want to do in asking the question, of course, is say their name first, right? Because that'll just save them a lot of embarrassment and you having to repeat your question over and over again. But we also have those little emojis, right? And little polling things that we can do hey, raise your hand, give me a thumbs up, give me a check mark, a red X. So there's lots of those that, especially when you have a lot of people on, those are very easy to do, very quick to do. Now, you're going to have to probably help some people find where those are located. But once they find them, it's like instant feedback for you, and it doesn't take a lot of time away from your presentation.
Yeah, and another thing that I love to do is when we don't have the option of having the audio interaction, the video interaction with our audiences in a virtual presentation, is utilizing that chat panel. You've seen that we've We've done that throughout this webinar. We've engaged with the chat panel. That is another way that you can drive that interaction. And even when you don't have that audio feedback from your audience, you're still getting the feedback, which helps you as a presenter have some energy. So we need to be aware of all of those things. And then building upon that, a couple of things to be aware of, depending on the platform that you're using. You can use polls, and you can engage with your audience through the use of polls. We can use breakout rooms. I know I was teaching some classes for my volunteer organization earlier this summer where we had up to 70 people in a session, and we used breakout rooms to still give our sessions a small group feel during those sessions. So that's something that's very powerful to do. And I know that we do that in many of our workshops as well. So Bill, what's one of your favorite things about the breakout rooms?
Yeah, and thank you, David. I love breakout rooms, especially for instructing or teaching skill sets and so forth, because we get more people involved and more people engaged instead of all sitting around watching one, right? And because you know that in virtual, it can get really passive for the audience. And I know we've probably been really passive with our audience today. We've tried to pull them in here a little bit. We got time constraints and a lot to talk about. And that can happen in the real world too, in your business. Breakout rooms will allow a lot of people to be engaged at once and still have the privacy to make that a very valuable experience. I love breakout rooms.
Yeah, it is such a powerful tool to be able to use in driving the engagement of your group. Well, anytime that you can also engage with multimedia and share your screen and show your audience what you are doing, that's another powerful way of driving engagement. I know, especially in our virtual our visual storytelling workshops, when I can share my screen and show my students exactly what I'm doing in PowerPoint and show them step by step, that is so powerful in driving that engagement and driving that understanding and retention in my presentations. I love that ability to do that. And we can do that with people around the globe, which is an amazing technology that we now have. And then going to a comment that was made in the chat panel, Charlie said he loves how Bill and I have been doing the tag team presentation. Well, that's another way that we can drive engagement is having multiple presenters, and all of the presenters bring different perspectives and bring different levels of expertise and different levels of energy. It gives our audience a different voice to listen to. So multiple presenters is something that's extremely powerful in a virtual presentation, because no one wants to hear the same voice the whole time.
Some of my favorite podcasts, David, that I like to listen to, and there isn't any visual, it's all voice. It is so much more engaging when there's two people having a conversation and they jab each other a little bit, bring in a little humor, but they bounce off each other and they're both experts. It makes it so much more engaging, for sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. But really, the best way that we are going to be able to drive engagement throughout a presentation is to be authentic. You can't fake it. You have to speak from who you are deep down and be authentic in your presentations. When you do that, you are truly going to connect with those audiences. So to me, that is the biggest thing in driving engagement through the use of different platforms. Just be yourself.
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to get people to do, right, David? Is that all that we've talked about today is to help your audience see the real you, a real person that understands where the audience is at and has information to help them be more productive.
You're absolutely right. Well, Bill, we are coming to the end of our time together and our time with the group. So what's next? What else do we have for our group as we start to wrap up this webinar?
Well, we got all kinds of stuff, and it's going to be found on our webpage. So, hey, here we are, infomercial. Here we go. Yeah, go to iSpeak.com, and you're going to see there is a ton of free webinars like this one, where you can log in, grab those, and watch them. And so that is there. And of course, there's a place also to contact us if you have anything that you want us to answer for you or help you with. I mean, the website is amazing, and there's really some cool stuff going on. Now, besides webinars, we have a lot of training classes, right, David?
We have a ton of training opportunities. So we can present training in 8-hour sessions. We can present trainings in paid webinars for customers. And then we also have these free webinars, but we do have a variety of class offerings that we have. So I want to ask you, Bill, what is your favorite class of all the ones that you see there on the screen?
Well, what's really fun here, and I knew you were probably going to ask me that, but you have my top 8 right there. I mean, it's like throwing a dart, and that's my favorite place, wherever it lands. These are great courses that are really designed to strengthen relationships through effective communication and increase productivity. That's at their core, every one of them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. And I couldn't agree with you more. It depends on the day which one's my favorite. It's almost like my children. I can't pick just one.
That's good because you have more than one.
That is correct. Well, we also have some other great things coming along the way that's going to be standing up here really soon. So tell us a little bit about iSpeak U.
Yeah, we're getting this up and going, and so that you can get in there. It's basically a lot of self-help kinds of things that are going to be there, where you can go through and pick the topic that you want to learn about and get it. I mean, it's not sequential, right, David? You just say, here's a list. I want to learn about this today. I want to learn about this today, and it's all going to be at the iSpeak University.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things that I'm really looking forward to this is if you are like me, you're pressed for time. We have very little extra time. All of the learning is going to be set up as micro learning. So you're not going to spend hours doing this. You can go and jump in and take a short lesson on something, and it is going to be fantastic. So I cannot wait until this rolls out and we're able to spread the knowledge out to the world.
Yeah, it's micro learning, not macro learning like this webinar.
And team, I do want to share with you, if you have any questions about iSpeak or learning about our webinars or our classes, reach out to our fantastic people at our office, Dara and John. If you want to get any information about our workshops or our webinars, reach out to them. They are the subject matter experts. They're going to do a great job of taking care of you in getting any questions that you have answered.
These are great people.
Fantastic people. We love working with Dara and John. And also, if you want to connect with us, there's a couple of ways that you can connect with us. You can always send an email to info@ispeak.com. You can check out our podcast on iTunes or any of the other major providers of platforms. It's called Everyday Improvement. And Bill, as we wrap up, do you have any parting thoughts that you'd like to share with the group?
Sure thing here. Thank you for the opportunity. Group, as you think about the next year and certainly the challenges that will come, we want you at iSpeak to be prepared for those challenges and to be able to put your best self forward. We really get these little snippets of time to make a difference. our challenge for you is don't waste those moments. Really make a difference. Thank you so much, group, and may all your virtual meetings be as joyful as they should be. And let's see if we can't kill some of that Zoom fatigue that we're all suffering. Thank you, group.
Thanks for joining us, team. We appreciate you sticking with us.